belt. I would imagine it's a whole different ballgame. But what about years 2 and 3 as a quarterback? What is that process like?
Well, this is a big year for Russell Wilson and his development as a passer. You know, my experience, years 2 to 3 were my biggest years because the game finally started slowing down. I can anticipate coverages better. I knew when the blitzes were coming. I went from thinking to playing, and that's going to be very important for Russell Wilson because they're going to ask him to throw the ball more. Teams, basically, to stop the Seattle offense, you've got to load the box. You've got to stop Marshawn Lynch, which puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback to make sure that, especially in those third downs, that he's delivering on time, that he's converting third downs. It's important for Russell to take his game to the next level.
And I think if you look at Russell Wilson's game, there's really not a hole in his game.
No.
He's good all the way around. I think the one area, if you wanted to be real serious about it and say, well, how can this good player get even better, it would be exactly that. Playing on rhythm, playing on time, in the structure of an offense, not as much creating. Sure, big plays come from when he gets outside the pocket and creates, but it also leaves you exposed for different types of hits, not knowing where everyone is on the defense. Also leads to turnovers in many cases. So I think that really where he can improve his game.
So it seems absurd to even suggest it, but just to be clear, neither of you have any concerns about these 2 seasons, not just one being any kind of aberration. Your estimation is that Russell Wilson will continue full steam ahead.
Listen, he's a hard worker, and he's never going to be the pure pocket passer. The ability to create with his legs is always going to be a part of his game, without a doubt. But like Tim said, he's going to have to limit those. Believe it or not, it's safer in the pocket. And when the offensive coordinator calls a play, listen, he wants that ball delivered on time. That is how the Seattle offense, and every offense for that matter, is most efficient.
Well, the Dallas Cowboys, among those teams still on the field for OTLs as well, they will work today, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week. And nobody, of course, knows the Cowboys better than our Ed Werder. Ed joins us now from the NFL Insiders studio. And Ed, let's start with linebacker Sean Lee. Tore his ACL last week during OTAs. He's expected now to miss the entire season, a big loss. What potential issue would the NFLPA have with that non-contact practice?
Well, we know that the NFL Players Association has already reached out to some of the Cowboy players who were there that day to ask them exactly what took place on the play on which Sean Lee was injured for the season in a non-contact drill. You see it here. Zach Martin makes clear contact with him. The 2 things that the NFLPA will want to know before it files a request for the practice tape, which is tantamount to making an accusation of wrongdoing. The 2 issues here are, did the contact play a role in the injury? The people at Valley Ranch within the Cowboys organization will tell you that they believe the injury happened when Sean Lee slipped a millisecond before the contact with the oncoming offensive lineman. The other issue is the practice tempo. Was that accelerated tempo that seemed to exist on that play carried out throughout the course of the entire practice, or was that an isolated type of incident? If the NFLPA determines that this is a fair question to ask, then it would make a request for that tape and submit it to the NFL. And if the Cowboys were found in violation, they could lose future practice sessions.
And Ed, that process notwithstanding, the Cowboys have to move on. What is the plan in Dallas to replace Lee?
Well, you know, Sean Lee's their most indispensable defensive player. The worst defense in the NFL last season without now DeMarcus Ware, Jason Hatcher, and Sean Lee, their middle linebacker, who also calls all the signals. Ideally, I'm told the Cowboys would like some of their young players to be able to develop and compete for that starting position. But if that doesn't work out, they have begun the process of evaluating other options, including veteran players like Jonathan Vilma and Brian Urlacher. Now, Brian Urlacher, of course, played his final seasons in Chicago under current Cowboys defensive coordinator Rod Marinelli. There has been no dialogue between the player and the team at this point. There's been a lot of internal discussion within the Cowboys organization. They are interested in Urlacher to the point that their scouting department has evaluated his tapes the final season. I think they have concerns about his ability to get off blocks. They would have to cover for him in certain situations, but obviously he'd add a lot of leadership. He'd have the ability to call the defenses, be given his familiarity with them. It just remains to be seen whether they decide to go that direction or not. I think Urlacher, Wendy, would tell you that he played through a lot of injuries his last year, and being off for a season might be beneficial.
While Des Bryant entering the final year of his deal, Ed, where does a new contract fall on the priority list for Jerry Jones?
Well, talking to people there, Des Bryant last week answered a question about whether he deserves a new contract by saying he does deserve a new contract. And I think by any measure of what he's done the last 2 seasons statistically, he's a top 10 receiver in the NFL. The top 10 receivers in football are making between $12 and $16 million a year. Des Bryant's scheduled to make just $2 million in the final year of his rookie deal. But I'm told the Cowboys don't at this point view this as a priority issue, more of a peripheral issue. Not saying it won't get done before the season or during the season. Clearly, they expect Des Bryant to play his entire career with the Cowboys. But right now, there's not a great sense of urgency.
Ed, thank you. We'll be back with you in just a bit. And just a reminder for everybody else, the rules for OTAs say no live contact is permitted. Back to Bryant, though, far from the only accomplished wideout entering the final year of his deal. Look at the list of potential wide receiver free agents. This is not this year. This is 2015. The top 2 pass catchers for the Broncos, Demaryius Thomas and Wes Welker, and Packers' Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb, all will hit the market and could potentially be changing jerseys. You can make the argument that everybody on that list deserves a new deal. They've all played well. They've all earned the right to get a new deal. But in your estimation, Tim, let's go through the top 5 most deserving wide receivers of a new deal. Mark will hold your thoughts till the end and let you, well, you can agree or disagree.
Well, I think when you look at these guys, you have to think about their past production as well as what their future production may be. That includes their age, what type of player they are now, if they have an injury history. And that's why at number 5, I think he's a fine wide receiver. I would put Jordy Nelson. The guy can run every route. He wins anytime you bump him and try to challenge him one-on-one coverage. The guy is outstanding. He's a hard worker, a good teammate, but he's close to 30. That's why he'll be actually over 30 at that point. That's why I have him at number 5. At number 4 is Torrey Smith. I actually don't think Torrey's as good of a player, but he's much younger. He's been healthier. And you look at Torrey Smith, 19 touchdowns in 3 seasons, over 1,000 yards last year. Torrey Smith, a fine player. At number 3, it's about his versatility, and it's Randall Cobb. The guy can do so much. You can handle the ball. Think of a Percy Harvin-type player. That's who Randall Cobb is. He has struggled with injuries a bit, but he's another young, ascending football player. At number 2, a little bit different style of guy, and that's, I should say, a very different style of guy, and that's Demaryius Thomas. A big, strong receiver that you can isolate and try to target one-on-one matchups. Demaryius Thomas, because of what he can do in the red zone, size-speed combination makes him number 2. Again, a young, relatively healthy player. And then number 1, because the guy is an absolute monster on the football field. You look at Des Bryant, over 90 catches the last 2 seasons, 12 touchdowns and 13 touchdowns respectively. He dictates coverage. He's that good. You have to pay attention to him. He would be my number 1 guy. You know, again, when you think about youth potential going forward, the guy's outstanding.
All right, all of these guys wish you were their general manager right now, but fair enough. That's the top 5 in Tim's estimation, most deserving of a new deal. We're talking wide receivers. Agree, disagree? You can add or
You know, I agree for the most part, and Tim's exactly right. The only wide receivers that are going to get long-term free agent contracts are the guys that are young and that are relatively healthy. And the only change I would make on that, and you mentioned it, would be Jordy Nelson. Jordy Nelson will be over 30 in 2015 when he becomes available. Good football player, but I would replace him with a younger player in Cecil Shorts. And that's not just a shameless plug for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Clearly, Jacksonville homer comment.
Listen, he had 66 catches last year. Justin Blackmon is out of the picture. Cecil's the veteran. They like him down there. He's going into his 4th season. We'll have Chad Henne going to him. They've been together for a year now. I expect a lot of production at him. I would put him in the top 5. And listen, at the top of the list, Tim's exactly right. It's Des Bryant. This guy's a beast. He's got a bright future. 25 years old. Just getting started.
He's still so young.
And he's still so young, and he's a good player, and he deserves to be paid.
Yeah, I will say this. Didn't have him on my list, but if you look at Cecil Shorts, he's probably the best wide receiver that nobody knows who he is.
Good point.
I mean, Cecil Shorts, when you think about the quarterbacks that he's played with, the production that he's had, and really just his ability to be a big play wide receiver in an offense that was, you know, starving for any type of production. You put him in a different offense. You put him with Aaron Rodgers in Jordy Nelson situation, you would see different production.
His anonymity, if there is such a thing, due in almost large part, almost completely to where he plays and the lack of success for that team. He's the Jaguars' leading receiver each of the last 2 seasons. Still to come, who doesn't have an opinion on Johnny Manziel? Certainly not his new offensive coordinator. Hear what Kyle Shanahan says he can do and who he reminds him of. And Father Time waits for no one, including the all-time greats. At 38, how much is left in the tank for Peyton Manning? His coach weighs in.
NFL Live, brought to you by CenturyLink, your link to what's next. And Allstate. Are you in good hands?